What's good, y'all? Welcome back. So it has been a little while, I know, since I've come to you guys. A little while. I usually don't go away for that long, but just a little while. But I actually was inspired to do this video from an email that I received today. Was it this morning? I think it was sent. Like I said, I like to get email requests from you guys or video requests from you guys via email, asking me to explore different topics. And this isn't a topic that we have not explored. It's actually a topic we have talked about in a previous video, the whole idea of race play. But this person added a little spin to it, right? So I'm going to read you guys this email, then I'll share my perspective. And by the way, I just noticed the email, right? It comes from the UK. Hotmail. The other one was it Hotmail or was it Yahoo? Like yahoo.co.uk. This one is hotmail.co.uk. Interesting. All right, so yeah, this one was sent today at 10:41 a.m. And he says, and I can tell like the people who actually come from my YouTube channel because they call me Danny. No one really calls me Danny. I think except for my dad, actually. My dad has like a number of nicknames for me. He used to call me Daniel L. And I named my fictional fantasy, BDSM fantasy story, Dying to Submit. The pen name that I use for Dying to Submit is actually Daniel L. Named after what my dad used to call me when I was growing up. But yeah, people don't call me Danny because they know my name. My full name is Danielle, right? But it's interesting when people call me Danny. Because my YouTube handle is Danny's World. Alright, so he says, I saw a video you posted on Race Play May 1st, 2021. Was it? Yo, I swear, sometimes I forget, I forget the videos I make. I make so many videos. And, this is just something I do, in my spare time. For fun. I mean, I am monetized, so, yeah, my videos are monetized, so I do get paid for them. But, I'm not doing it necessarily for the money. Wow, okay. Wait, is this the one he's talking about? Race play and interracial dominant submissive relationships. Honestly, I can't even recall what the hell I was saying in that video. I make so many videos. Wait, I did 3 parts of this? Interesting. I think it came at the request from someone who watches my YouTube channel. But anyway, he says, I am a black heterosexual man in my 50s and I live in England, UK. England, UK? I thought it was the other way around. Okay, whatever. First of all, thank you for having the courage to publicly broach this highly contentious topic. I'm like, oh yeah, I can tell that he's a Brit. Because he used all these fancy words. Not to say, us Americans, we don't use fancy words, but I just think that obviously the English language was developed in England, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was. That's where it came from. So, of course, they're the experts at language expression when it comes to the English language, I think. So, you can kind of tell. Contentious topic. Alright, race play is something I've never done in real life, and I only found out about it in the past 2 years from interracial porn videos. Why do things have to come from porn? It just irks me. It just irks me, you guys. I used to feel quite conflicted about it as I am fully conversant with Pan-African ideas, spirituality, history, etc. Never done it. You're heterosexual? In what way would that play out, though? How would race play played out with a heterosexual black man in his 50s. Because race play is basically the interaction, right? It's just like it's a fantasy, but it's played out. And it's a fantasy because it's something that is imagined, right? It's not real per se, but it's being enacted in the real world, right? People actually do play this out, but how I've seen it played out is basically between a black female who becomes like the slave and a white male who's a slave master. But I guess it can be played out in other ways. I'm just trying to figure out how with a heterosexual black man. Like, I guess they can do role reversal and he could be the slave master and take on like a white female slave. That'll be interesting, but it's not the same. Would that really be race play? I don't know. Expand my mind, you guys. Expand my mind if I'm wrong. Sometimes I think that y'all be playing with me, right? I'm like, is this really? That's why I would like to have these conversations like in vivo, like in real life, face to face, or even over Zoom, because Zoom is a thing now where you can actually see the person behind the screen and it's not made up. Because sometimes I feel like a lot of this shit is just baloney and it's made up. It's not real. And you guys are playing upon my intelligence, okay? Because you know that I'm Pan-African, so you're saying, okay, whatever. But I could be wrong, though. As I'm fully conversant with Pan-African ideas, spirituality, history, at the same time, prior to being historically informed, I used to read erotic literature with a plantation theme. For a while, I couldn't reconcile the fantasy element of these books that I enjoyed with the social, political, psycho-spiritual realities of the history of slavery. So it was difficult for you to really wrap your mind around those fictional stories, right? With the plantation theme. Because you're like, how could that even be fantasy? How could someone romanticize something that has such harsh undertones in life, like in our lives, right? But you'll be surprised what we can do, like, with our reality, because the mind is such a, like, I say this all the time, like, the mind is so malleable. It's so many different ways you can conceptualize a thing, so many different ways you can look at a thing, right? And I remember I was working at a practicum site in LA. And I had a white colleague. She was also trained to become a psychologist, right? She was cool. She was alright. But somehow she would like to play. I think that was like the race play part of it, right? The work. Because she would kind of like to play on the racial differences between me and her. I think it was intentional, right? So she would bring up topics like, oh yeah, I think she mentioned like, oh, in my class, like we were talking about slavery, and you know, some people identified with the slaves and said they feel bad for them. She was like, I don't see how people can really feel bad, especially for the house slaves, because they got pampered, they got the attention, they got like the best treatment, right, from their slave master. So how could someone feel pity for someone who actually had a great experience? And honestly, part of me got offended, but I think I think I've done like a pretty good job, and I think it's mostly my training and becoming a psychologist and knowing thyself. Therapists know thyself, right? And having control over my own emotions and my own impulses, right? I think I've kind of mastered not reacting, right? Just because something stirs up something within you, right, doesn't mean that you always have to have a response or have to react. Sometimes it's just a matter of you thinking or listening, hearing, listening, hearing, then listening, right? Because when you listen to understand, even if it conflicts with what you believe in. So people sometimes have a difficult time with watching my videos because sometimes I can present two diametrically opposed perspectives, right? In the same video. And for some people watching, they say, oh, you make contradictions. You're contradicting yourself so many times. And it's just like, is it a contradiction? Or is it just me being able to see things from different perspectives and be able to hold multiple perspectives at the same time, even within the same breath? Some people don't get it, so they're just like, all right, which one is it? Is it this or is it that? It's just like, why can't it be both? I've always been that person. And like I said, I'm not really a big fan of astrology, but for those who are, right, I am a Libra. I was born in September. And they say that Libras have a desire to seek balance. Someone mentioned the yin and the yang, right? I think it was Carl Jung. Carl Jung he coined a lot of terms, a lot of theories and different ways of understanding like human behavior, right? So I think it was him, and it kind of goes along with what we're talking about here in this video. We're going to get into in a minute. But I just think it's interesting. A lot of people can't do that. A lot of people can't hold two different perspectives, let alone multiple at the same time, right? It's difficult, but through my training, I think I've kind of mastered that. So I don't get all bent out of shape just because a person presents a different perspective, right? Because I'm able to see things from their perspective. And if I'm not, at least I express a curiosity to understand. So in my openness to understand, my colleague who I was working with, right, we shared the same office. It was a spacious office, but we shared the same office. And it wasn't just me. It was her. She's a white woman, a blonde, okay? And then it was another white woman. In the office, we were all trained to become psychologists. And this topic came up. And I'm just like, interesting. I actually took a picture. We took a selfie. I took a selfie with her. I had to, right? Because we were talking about the whole idea of white fragility, too. Like, a lot of different things come up. And it's, this is right up my alley because my dissertation is on black identity, acculturation, and implicit racial bias. And she knew that. I think that's probably how it came up because I think she was asking me about what my research was on. And we began to talk about slavery and history and the remnants of our history living here in America. But yeah, a part of me did get kind of bothered. I'm just like, okay. I guess I got bothered by her degree of ignorance and not being able to see and not being able to understand how that statement can be offensive, right? But then another part of me was just like, maybe she has a point. Because nothing is all good and nothing is all bad. It's good and bad in everything. And I know when we think of slavery, we think of just like all of the tragedies. The lynchings, and how the slaves were fed scraps, and the sexual harassment that the slaves went under, and the humiliation the male and the female slaves had to endure, right? It's just a lot. The list goes on. But that left an imprint within us. I've talked about this before. It left an imprint within our DNA. And so when you come across interracial couples, people wonder, like, why do people date outside their race? But I mean, that question is very deep, right? It's very multi-layered. It's philosophical. There's many different ways you can look at it. From a genetic level, from a biological level, one can say that that's just their genetic proclivity, right? And especially when it comes to this whole idea of the benefit of race mixing, the genetic benefit of race mixing, right? To kind of make the genetic pool more diverse so that we develop immunity against certain ailments, especially that are inherent within a certain group of people. It could be beneficial for them to race mix. It's like saving the race being, I guess, the human race to that extent. But I think it could be part of our genetic wiring, right? Because it's deeper than just race mixing for some people. You know, it's just like they reenact these experiences, these dynamics that were seen back in the 1800s, back in the 1700s, back in the 1600s here in America. That dynamic that you see. I don't think we need to be reminded, or do we, of what it looked like. But there was a clear power dynamic. I mean, it's kind of still clear today, though. So it makes sense to understand when you look at race relations and how black people relate to white people. It makes sense. Black people, especially the leaders, right, the conscious leaders, they get like furious. They're infuriated when they see black people like, oh, they're cooning, right? Or they're being so submissive. They change their whole behavior when they get around white people. Why do they gotta change their whole persona? Like, it's a mask that they put on when they are around white people. And it's just like, I don't think this happens at a conscious level. It happens at a subconscious level. So, are they cooning? Because there's a differentiation that a lot of black conscious scholars make between cooning and being a Negro, right? So they say when a black person is a coon, right, they're buck dancing for white supremacy, oh, they know better. But the Negro is ignorant. The Negro does not know. And to know is to be conscious. But if these behaviors are happening on the subconscious level, a lot of black people aren't aware until, like you pointed out to them, right? And I'm notorious for doing that, especially when I'm around like black people who are like my friends or whatever, we're out, because they're not aware. And I think it's important that black people are aware, because you reinforce this dynamic, like this whole idea of white supremacy. You reinforce a power dynamic. It's no woe is black people. Oh, woe is black people. You know, we're suffering. We're at the bottom. As if we're just a complete victim and we don't have any power. We don't have a say-so. We don't have a role in our own victimization or re-victimization within society. Because we do. You say he's jealous of my tan? Oh yeah, I did get a tan. I got darker being out in the sun today. And I was just soaking up that nice vitamin D, from the sun. I felt it. But this is natural. This is just natural melanin, And so, I think it's worth pointing out to black people, because it's a subtle thing that happens. Just changing your tone. It's like, is something that is deeply embedded in our DNA, in our subconscious. And one could make the argument that the subconscious mind is no different than our DNA. People ask the question, where does the mind live? Where is the mind? Is there a physical location for the mind? Or is it just your DNA, your coding? Your coding, right? So yes, Carl Jung, he was a psychiatrist, and psychiatry deals with biology. It's a science. But in his day, he would like to look at it, psychiatry, as a marriage between biology and spirituality. And it's just, these terms are just ways for us to really conceptualize, to understand, like, behavior on many different levels, right? And there's different ways that we can look at behavior on a molecular level, on a cellular level, on a spiritual level, on a psychological level. But it's the same. There's so many like splits even within psychology, right? You have all these different disciplines, right? Biology, chemistry, psychology. And when you think about it, it's so much overlap, because it's like, oh, the way that a biologist or the way that a psychiatrist may explain something, it's pretty much the same thing that a way a psychologist would explain it. It's just different words. But it's the same. And even within psychology there, unfortunately, were so many splits. It's just, I think, people wanting to have like a monopoly over information. They want to have like control over it, right? And so they branch off and say, oh no. Not only that they want control, but it's also people want to be different. Like, you want to be individuals. So it's just like, oh, I disagree with that part. I agree with that part, but I disagree with that part. So we're going to branch off and create a whole different sect within psychology. But Carl Jung, he was a founder of psychoanalytic psychology. It goes deep. But going back to what I was saying, it's just, yeah. It's something that is deeply rooted within our DNA, or our subconscious mind, right? I kind of think those two are kind of synonymous. And it lies dormant, but then it can be activated. It's activated when you come in contact, right, with people from a different race. We're talking about race play or racial dynamics, race relations. It's something that becomes activated within the psyche or the DNA of black people. Will it ever go away? Can a person be reconditioned? Can the brain be rewired? I mean, they say that the brain is plastic, right? There's plasticity within the brain, so that yes, it can be rewired, but I think some things are just so hardwired within our DNA, within our makeup, that really can't like rewire it, because it has existed for so many years. And I've gotten to like this debate with a person I was talking with, and his argument was that in order for change to happen, change will have to happen not in our generation, but in generations to come, because it speaks to the depth of the wiring, the depth of the socialization, the conditioning that has taken place. We like to think of it, like I said, like in the mind, the conditioning of the mind, the classical conditioning that has taken place on through so many different mediums, right? Media playing a major role. But it goes deep. Some people be commenting, and their comments are so way off base. This person says, it's not DNA, it's kindness and love and appreciate. What the hell does that have to do? What is kindness and love and appreciation? We're talking about our DNA. We're talking about our psyche and how we reenact what we were back in the day. So Carl Jung, he spoke on how the subconscious mind is something that is like was widely studied it kind of still is, but probably not as much in depth as it was, I think, back then when they pioneered psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic psychology. I mean, the school that I'm getting my PhD from taught us psychoanalysis, right? Like that was like my specialty. It's my specialty within psychology. So I love it, and this is why it resonates with me. It makes a lot of sense. When things make a lot of sense, like I gravitate to it. So I am, I guess, blessed to have attended a school that specializes in teaching psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic theory. And we learned about, of course, Freud. He's one of the majors, and a little bit about Carl Jung and about Melanie Klein. And I don't know what's up with, like, a lot of female psychologists just don't like Melanie Klein. I'm like, what is it? They just don't like her. I mean, I think a lot of analysts, they have a way sometimes of just getting under your skin. I think just by the language that they use, the verbiage that they use, and some of these theories can just be so rooted in like sexuality, which is often repressed within us. We just like, what is Melanie thinking when she said that? But I think, and I said this even when I was in my class, my psychodynamic class, right? I said this out loud that I think, I mean, it's unfortunate that, of course, there have been so many splits within psychology, but I think every psychologist, they're right. They all have something to contribute, and it's worth just being curious to see what they mean. So, continuing to read what he says, how I've been able to somewhat mollify, he says that he enjoyed, going back, for a while I couldn't reconcile the fantasy element of these books that I enjoyed with the socio-political, psycho-spiritual realities of the history of slavery. It's really rooted in politics. Definitely. It's definitely political. That's probably why it was difficult for you to reconcile. Not that you couldn't reconcile, but it was just difficult for you to reconcile with the fantasy element of it, given the political nature of slavery. But there are people who are living the life and who are really enjoying this whole idea of race play. I think like I said, it's more on the subconscious level. Like the people I think who are interracial relationships, they can't even explain it. They can't even explain why. As if they have to explain like why they are attracted to someone outside of their race. Because it's really not the conscious mind often that drives their behavior, that drives most of human behavior for that matter. It's the subconscious mind. It's their DNA that drives them to be attracted to someone of a different race. And they're just in it. I mean, you have philosophers. There's a school of thought where people say that life exists because we exist, because we project out into the world a reality that is within our mind. And when we die, life no longer exists. Shit can get kind of deep. How I've been able to somewhat mollify these opposites, I believe, has something to do with Carl Jung's idea of the shadow. As I understand it, it entails acceptance of elements of one's psyche that a person may believe to be wrong or bad. Accepting the shadow is a part of being whole. Yeah, so the shadow basically, as Carl Jung describes it, is just what it is. It's a shadow. It's something that is dark, but it's more like a reflection. It's like a part of you, right? But it's a part of you that people it's kind of invisible. People can't see, right? Symbolically speaking, they can't see this part of you, but it exists. And it follows you everywhere you go. Especially when light shines upon it, right? Shadows disappear when the light disappears. But as long as the light is reflecting at an angle, you can see a shadow. That shadow is you, right? It's a different perspective of you, but it's still you. And so it's a part of us. This is a conscious mind. Your desires, your wishes, your ideas that may not be socially accepted, right? But it's still part of you, and oftentimes we repress those ideas, those desires, out of fear of not being accepted, out of fear of being rejected, being judged. So we take on this persona. It's like it's a fake mask. It's a mask, right, that you wear. We do a good job at wearing a mask, but you'll be surprised to see what lies beneath. And I think that's, people ask me, like, why did I decide to become a psychologist? Like, what interests me in psychology is just like, yo, when you really get to understand the mind and you understand people, that shit is fascinating. The lives that people live, like people live not even double lives, triple lives, quadruple lives. It's just like all contained in one body, and then you wonder why there's so much neurosis. You wonder why there's so much depression. There's so much anxiety within people, right? Depression, anxiety being the top two freaking most diagnosed psychological disorders in America. We're talking about millions of people are affected by these disorders. They experience depression and anxiety. I made a video about that when I was out in LA. I talked about psychotropic medication and all of that, yo. But we wonder why, because we're living so many different personas. That shit can be confusing for the individual, for the mind, for the person living this reality of wearing so many different masks. And the mask that you're wearing, you're not even really being accepted, right? You're projecting, you're presenting a mask that you think society wants, that is acceptable to society. But then you still don't feel accepted. You still don't feel appreciated. That is what creates anxiety. That's what creates neurosis. So yeah, to his point, Carl Jung suggested that it's better for us to accept just the whole person. But not only that, just to keep it real. Make it simple, right? And I know people say this so much. Just be yourself. Just be. But do we really live in a society that allows a person to just be? Partially. I think that's probably why, like, I've been drawn to move to New York City, because this is I think really truly, aside from I guess LA. I give it to LA. Maybe San Francisco. I never visited San Francisco, but from what I hear, like, people can really be themselves. But New York, you can really be yourself, and not only can you be yourself or weird or, different, like, it's rewarded. People would, like, respect it. You get attention in a good way from it, right? People are wowed by it. Being different, because it's just like, okay, you're breaking away from the norm. People applaud people who are different. I just saw a video today because I take the train. It's a quick train ride from Upper East Side to Lower Manhattan, where my internship is. And yeah, I like to entertain myself sometimes by watching Instagram videos while I'm on my way to my internship site, and I saw this video. It was taken here in New York City, yo, of this woman. She was hanging her, like, yo, I don't know how she fixed her freaking hair in a bun, but she fixed it in a way where she attached this device to her, and the device was like a rope that was attached to a light pole or some stable force, right, in the ground. And she was literally hanging. First, before I even saw like the rope, I didn't see the rope at first. I just saw her, and she was spinning and doing her like acrobatic moves, and you know, gapping her legs wide open. And I'm just like, oh, that's neat, twirling around. And then I saw the string after I saw her performance. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not like magic, because you just never know. Like, for at a distance it can seem like magic, right? Whoa, she's kind of spinning in like midair, but no, she was like obviously hanging from this rope. And I think the video was like titled like a human ornament or something, but and people were just like amazed, just in awe, and recording, and no one said, oh, like, this lady is crazy or she's insane. It's just like, no, crazy is the normal here in New York, and you can be yourself, and that's what I love so much about New York, right? Because it's just, it allows you to really tap into that part of your humanity that oftentimes other places look at you like they judge you. And then, knowing that you're going to be judged, what happens? You repress it. And that's where the neurosis comes from. That's where the anxiety and the depression comes from, because you're not able to be yourself, and then you're trapped in this body, in this mind, this psyche, where so many different parts of you exist. But you really haven't been able to express those different parts of yourself. And those different parts of yourself really haven't actualized, right? You can't even really say that you're fully developed or matured as a person until you've been able to become self-actualized, become who you are, because you're so busy trying to be something that you're not, fit in. So yeah, I agree with that tenet within Carl Jung's theory in terms of, you know, the good and the bad. Shadow is just, it's a term that, you know, he uses to describe this concept, but, you know, there are other ways that you can see it. It's just a matter of just being yourself. Like, yo, I am like the prime advocate of just be you, right? Be yourself. Now, of course, you know, you may face some opposition, because depending on like what part of yourself you're being, you know, or how it's manifesting itself, right? Because of course there are different parts of ourselves, right? Like, I have a professional self. Of course, I have a personal self. You have your sexuality, right? That's a part of who you are. And for me, my sexuality is not something that I wouldn't say I broadcast it, but I express it in ways that I feel, you know, is appropriate. But I've had some issues with that I've run into, you know, even within academia, and I knew this would happen. So even on my website, where I talked about my book Dying to Submit and how it's created like this kind of controversy within academia, I wrote that line before I even started my PhD, before it even became a controversy, because I knew it would, right? I was kind of like speaking things into existence, right? And then like some of my colleagues got a hold of my website. I don't know how. Probably because I do use my personal email in correspondence when they say, oh, you should use your school email. Yeah, I use my personal email. So they probably like typed in my name. And I stand out. I've always stood out. And they Google me, type in my email address, and my website came up. And oh my gosh. This is her? BDSM? It's nothing. It's just, first of all, it's a fictional story. I mean, it is based on true events. It's autobiographical, but big fucking deal. I don't see the big deal. Because I accept that part of me, right? People just don't want to be themselves, yo. Oh, yeah, but I know what I was going to say. So, knowing that, yes, like the fascination of humanity and how people are living like multiple identities, but they're trapped still behind one facade or a persona that they want the world to see, and learning that there's a whole different person within that person that they present to the world, right? There's different people within that person. I work like, I treat people. So I get to see those other people within a person. It's fascinating. I mean, I'll give an example. Okay, so I was working at a religious-based clinic in Los Angeles, right? And, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but, religious folk, I think it makes sense, though, when you think about it, like how they advocate so much for being righteous, pure, sin-free. They are, like, the biggest sinners, yo. They're, like, the biggest sinners. Yo, I'm not here to judge. I'm just pointing out an obvious reality. I'm just stating the obvious. I mean, who doesn't know that, right? But some people may not know. Some people may not know, but I think the majority of us know. Like, Christians. I mean, I don't want to get too specific, but I'm just saying religious folk, and we know we're talking about like the predominant religions, Christianity and Islam, right? But Islam, I think for the most part, they do a good job, but they not completely freaking righteous either, though. But I think Christians got it bad because they believe in forgiveness and God will forgive you. You can sin, right? Because he who was without sin cast the first stone. We're born sinners, and all these beliefs that they embody kind of reinforces the sin in a way. Knowing that, you're going to be forgiven anyway. All you got to do is just confess your sins, right? So working at this religious-based clinic, of course, I mean, the clinic was in a church, so it's definitely like the people that I treated, they were Christians, right? And I remember there was one, this is not uncommon, but I just have to say, this is not uncommon. I mean, you see a lot of Christian women, they're trying to come to terms with themselves. It's just like, life should not be this complicated, yo. But the way they present it, right? Like when they come in therapy, right? They're presenting problem. Like it seems so convoluted, and it seems just, oh my gosh, I can't. I'm wrestling with this, right? And what was the person wrestling with? Okay, they're wrestling with what society tells them they should be: holy, righteous, sin-free. Don't have sex before marriage. It's fornication if you do. They're wrestling with that, right? But meanwhile, you have a natural proclivity to just be. So this woman, like, she was out there she was fucking. I have to just be real. She was fucking. I'm talking about not just fucking one man. She was fucking like, she was out there. And I got to hear about all these different men. She would travel the distance to go fuck these men. I mean, men, she didn't even know these men. She didn't even know them. And she would travel the distance and just fuck. And then after, she feels so much guilt. And it was interesting working with her, right? Because within cognitive behavioral theory, which is one of the prominent theoretical schools of thought and clinical approaches that psychologists and therapists use, CBT for short, but it's cognitive behavioral therapy, is that people have these irrational beliefs, and that those irrational beliefs, of course, are acted upon, and that's what creates problems for them right in their life. And so the intervention would be to confront the rational belief that they have. Sounds simple, right? So her belief was that if God, if God did not want her to be fucking all these different men, hundreds of different men, then she wouldn't do it, right? Like, there would be a sign that God will send down from heaven to interrupt her from doing it. And because there was no sign, like something drastic had to happen to say, okay, I don't need to go. I don't need to go fuck this man. She wouldn't fuck the man. But then coming back from her excavation, she would feel so much guilt. And the guilt obviously would come from these beliefs that she has about what it means to be pure and righteous. Being pure and righteous doesn't mean you go out and have sex with all these different men, especially not before marriage. It was not your husband. So that was her internal conflict, right? And it's not a simple fix of just accepting the good with the bad, because you're dealing with people who have been socially conditioned, I would like to say brainwashed, right? By religion and so many different other sects or cults. Really a cult. Religion is like a cult, yo. But that's a whole different other video, right? Trying to uproot that irrational belief is difficult when, like I said, a person is attached, right? This is who they are. This is their identity, right? It's so deeply ingrained that, oh, if you step away from the faith, then, oh, you're going to be damned to hellfire, eternal damnation for the rest of your life after you die. And there's this fear that they have. And so imagine, like, the level of neurosis that exists in their mind because of these beliefs that they have internalized and they have made their own to the point that it's become who they are, right? And it's not just a belief that, oh, they came to accept in their adulthood. It's something that they were raised in, and their parents believed this, and their parents believed it, and it's intergenerational to the extent that it could be on a biological level, that this behavior is manifesting itself. These beliefs are manifesting themselves, right? It's hard to detach for a lot of people. And so it's almost like, we think it's like you create your own neurosis, because you don't have to be in such, like, she was like, yo, when I say wrestling, like, people wrestle, Christians wrestle. A lot of religious folk, they wrestle with this. To the extent, like, when I say wrestle, like, you're losing sleep. It's affecting your performance at work. And she had a high-paying job, yo. She was well off financially. She was decent, working for the state, good benefits, high-paying salary. But it was getting to her because she's at work and thinking about, like, oh, I've sinned. Feeling so much guilt. Can't sleep. It's just hard for her. Her whole life just, like, stopped and had to revolve around this guilt that she felt. It's awful. Because I just feel like that's just an example, but so many people find themselves in that. Like, you kind of create, like, your own neurosis. And I made a post, and I know it was very controversial, and I gotta tell you, people got upset with me when I said this, that depression is a lifestyle. They got upset because they didn't understand my perspective. Oftentimes when people get triggered, right, the feelings that arise when they're triggered, like, it takes them out of the current state, right? It almost kind of makes them illogical in their thinking. Because when people get triggered, it's a trigger. A trigger basically is something that happens in the present moment, but is linked to something that happened before. maybe multiple things that have happened before, right? And those multiple things carry with them very strong emotions linked to, more often than not, bad memories, right? And so when people get triggered, instead of pausing, being in control of one's emotions, they lash out and they attack, they fight, they debate. But I did say that on my post. I said depression is a lifestyle. Yeah, people got triggered, y'all, more often than not, because they probably were, experiencing depression. Like, oh no, it's not. It's a biological disease, disorder. Like, they're telling me this as if I don't know that, right? Me saying that depression is a lifestyle, it's a philosophical statement to get people to think. But people really don't think oftentimes, especially in the world we live in, this microwave society, and people are so quick to react. That's why I know a lot of y'all don't even be watching my videos sometimes, because you can tell in the response when people are triggered. It's like, yo, not only did you not watch my video in its entirety, you didn't think about what you're going to say. You didn't think about what I said, first of all, in depth before you responded. I can tell a person who put thought to their response, because usually it doesn't involve like all this animosity. Like, for what? Like, my words, I can't harm you with my words. I don't know you, you don't know me. Why are you so bothered? But they were bothered. Like, how can you say such a thing? Because people don't want to take ownership for their own neurosis, their own depression. We know that, yes, depression has a biological root, neurobiological root. Of course, there's a deficit of serotonin, right? That's why psychiatrists prescribe medication. Of course, we know that it has that root. But if people could take responsibility, at least partially, for their depression, right? People have become depressed because of COVID. COVID is a social problem has impacted the world. But it doesn't mean that you can't take responsibility for your part, your reaction to these events that are happening in your life, right? So really, my statement, it was more than a philosophical statement that triggered people, of course, or people became triggered by, shall I say. But it was a statement of empowerment. That was my intention, right? That was the source. I don't say things to harm people. It's not my intention to harm people. It's to empower you, to let you know that, yeah, your lifestyle can cause depression. Your lifestyle, meaning the choices that you make, your perspective on life, your reactions to things that happen in your life, your habits, your routine. What does your daily routine look like? Because the depression just doesn't come out of nowhere, right? It just doesn't happen. I mean, it can. I mean, there could truly, inherently be something happening within your body, like a medical condition that induced the depression, right? So let's not rule that out. But oftentimes depression isn't linked to a medical condition, right? It's not. It's often linked to choices that we have made, our perception of the world, that we develop. I'm not here to freaking lecture y'all. Alright, because sometimes I feel like I be lecturing, but I'm just saying though, it is a matter of perspective, right? And going back to, I feel like I be getting way off fucking topic, but it's all related. Going back to the topic at hand, because they were just talking about basically Carl Jung and how he has this belief, or he had, I'm speaking has as if he's still alive, yo. This man has been long gone. I think, when did he pass away? 1960 something, 50 something. But yeah, he lived a long life, I think through his 80s, and he's, you know, he's still alive. So I kind of speak about people that have transitioned like they're still here, because they are. And so he has this belief that, yeah, like accepting the good and the bad, like that can alleviate a lot, and people just basically accepting who they are, right? The shadow of themselves. And I linked it to an experience that I had in working with, you know, some clients at this religious-based clinic out in LA, and people just having, like, you know, they live in double lives, you know, and create their own neurosis and their own depression. And yes, she was depressed. She suffered from depression. Cycles of depression. And if only just people had a different perspective of life. Sometimes that's just what it takes, just reframing. Like, I don't think people, they undermine. I get it, yo. I get it. I've been through a lot in my life. But to know, like, yo, people don't understand the power of the mind. They don't. They don't. Much of their power lives with outside of them. That's the reason why they need a savior. Right? They need a master. They don't believe that the power lies within themselves. Unless, of course, you know, the higher power gives it to them. And they do believe that, but they really don't believe it, though. It's all in your perspective, the way you see the world, and they can't even change their perspective to that extent because it contradicts their religious beliefs, right? There's a conflict there, and it's always going to be a conflict there. That's just an example, but that example is a representation of how a lot of people are living, right? This cage, this prison that a lot of people have put themselves in society, in our world. They suffer. And people say, oh, well, what can therapy do for me? I mean, you gotta think about it. Psychology can be a religion, so to speak, right? It's a school of thought. Like, there are different schools of thought within psychology, right? And what is religion? Religion is it's a philosophy. People say, oh, no, it happened. This is true. This is the truth, right? It's the truth because you believe it, though. Different theories in psychology can be considered the truth. I mean, especially if you talk to some of these pioneers, right? This is, like, they can go into debate and argue it to the end. Like, this is it. If you believe it to be true, it is true. And so, yeah, I was going to say, a lot of times people, like, undermine, like, the efficacy, the power of therapy. Like, don't work. Whatever floats your boat. But it just amazes me. It's kind of like a paradox that people look to religion, right, to solve a lot of problems in their life, or every problem for that matter. But it creates new problems. Very significant problems that really does impact their day-to-day functioning. Not only that, but their livelihood, their safety, their well-being, their health, physical health, you know what I'm saying? Puts them at risk. So, I'm interested in hearing your perspective as always. Feel free to leave your comments below, questions below. It's amazing, y'all, how fast time goes by. I just heard from my dissertation chair today. She was asking me how things are going. I'm like, yo, I looked at my calendar today on my way to my internship site. And I literally have 3 more weeks of in-person evaluations. 3 more weeks of me going to the office. And then after that is 2 more weeks. So a total of 5 more weeks. 5 more weeks of my internship. It's just I am going to be done. It's just like, part of me is just like, it's going to be a relief. But part of me is just like, no. I kind of want it to end in a way. Because it's just like, going into like the unknown. The unknown can be scary, right? I mean, not that I don't know what's next. Because I have shit lined up. Of course I have shit. I have a postdoc lined up that I've already signed and agreed to. But it doesn't mean that I know everything that's going to happen. We just don't know. Just the unknown. But I'm excited, I'm excited about the future. I always believe that I have a bright future ahead. Do you guys believe that you have a bright future ahead? The future is bright no matter what happens. And you can handle it. On that note, I'm going to end this video. Leave your comments below, share this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. I don't know why it appears that, I don't know, it looks kind of blurry. I didn't really notice that. It's kind of blurry. I tried to clean off the screen, but I don't know. I just need to get a new phone. I had this phone for so long, you guys. I think I bought this phone back in 2018. It's crazy. It's 2021, 3 years, the same phone. But I do need to get a new one. Alright, catch y'all later. Y'all white men or something else, you have an addiction to dominant women. That's your race playing out, huh? Alright, catch y'all later.